Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's just after 12 o'clock, so we don't want to waste any time here, so we have plenty of time for questions and comments at the end, so we're going to go ahead and get going. But welcome, good afternoon. Welcome to the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley Tuition and Fee Forum. I'm Martin Baylor, Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration with UTRGV, and I will be your presenter today. Why are we here? Well, the number one consideration why we're here is for the audience to provide feedback, for our students to provide feedback on the UTRGV Tuition and Fee Task Force Committee. We're here to hear your comments. We want to focus on the academic costs, the tuition and fees that are required by all students. And please note that what we share with you today is our tentative recommendation at this point. But we want to place that in front of you and hear your thoughts and comments. We do have a few ground rules we want to set. I would like to hold all questions and comments until after the presentation. We will allow one question per person unless time permits that we can actually do more than that. And we would like to limit comments and questions to 2 minutes apiece. At the close of the presentation, we will provide your SGA task force representatives' email addresses so that you can send any comments or questions that you don't get on the table today to those folks, so we can consider those as well. The considerations of the task force group, some of the things we thought about entering this project were the fact that we have one institution with multiple campuses. We wanted to consider the flexibility of our resources. We wanted the end result to be transparent, predictable, and affordable. We were very mindful of the impact on students. And we wanted to provide sufficient revenue with which to pursue the UTRGV goals and provide a quality education and services. As you know, the task force put out an online survey earlier in October, and I'll share some of those results with you later in the presentation. And then we also met with the Edinburgh and Brownsville SGA executive committees. I believe it was October 24th we met with them and sought some feedback from those groups. The timeline we're working with is we will submit our recommendations to Dr. Bailey in early December. He will then in turn submit his recommendations to the UT system probably in the mid-December timeframe, probably before the holidays. And then we will have consideration by the Board of Regents in February of next year. There's many benefits, needs, and challenges as you look at what we're about to take forth on with UTRGV. And the top couple are certainly faculty positions, class availability, and how they work hand in hand. We want to be able to provide faculty resources, ensure that we're keeping our faculty-to-student ratio at a manageable amount, and that there's sufficient availability for those courses so that you can actually get the courses you need when you need them to graduate on time. We wanted to look at operating and maintenance expenses that are coming online with many of the new facilities that we're bringing on. We reviewed the current inflexibility of a lot of our current fee structures, as well as the overwhelming need for financial aid we know that does exist. This is a chart. It is a chart of all 37 Texas institutions of higher education in the state of Texas, and it's just giving us a perspective on that list of public institutions that exist in Texas, where everyone falls, and just want to kind of point out that of the 37, well, of course, the little thing, there it is. Pan Am is 36 out of 37, and Brownsville is 37 out of 37 when it comes to total academic cost. And total academic cost is comprised of statutory tuition, designated tuition, mandatory fees, and an average of course fees. So this allows us to set what we're calling TAC, total academic cost, and allows universities to compare apples to apples across the state of Texas so that we can really see where we fall on a cost basis. The institutions that are highlighted in orange are our sister UT institutions. One of the main things that the task force set out to accomplish was tuition and fee simplification. We wanted one price for all locations and all modes of delivery. We wanted to eliminate as many fees as we could in the process, which enhances the flexibility of resources across the institution to allow us to do things that we need to get done when they need to get done. And sometimes those priorities shift. Unfortunately, revenues funding sources don't always shift along with those priorities. And then we always had a preference for designated tuition, as it's a good source of general use funds, but it also increases the set-asides for financial aid, which gives us a dual credit there. We get additional resources for the institution, but we also get additional resources for financial aid. We also took a look at the course load of the combined institutions, looking at full-time versus part-time. And as you can see here on the right side, we have identification of the hours that our full-time students take, with the most being at 12 hours, but almost 72% of the students at both campuses are taking full-time loads, with only 28.6% on that part-time basis. And one strategy to improve our four-year graduation rate is encouraging those that are taking 12 hours to take additional courses and graduate sooner. Another thing that the task force considered, or is considering, is a 12-hour cap. Capping to 12 hours is a very common strategy amongst Texas institutions. It serves as an immediate rebate for the student. And as you can see, once you get to the 12-hour level on the 12-hour cap, anything that you take additional does not change your out-of-pocket cost at that point. So taking 15 hours or taking 18 hours, or for those go-getters taking 21 hours, there's no additional cost over that 12 hours. This would strictly, though, apply to resident students only. Another recommendation the task force is considering is the guaranteed tuition plan. This is required by statute, and the statute does require that it is at least offered as an option, and it is a fixed 4-year rate. The task force tentative recommendation does include the fact that we want to establish a guaranteed rate for all students, and I'll get into a little more detail on that in a couple of more slides. But we're also recommending an incentive to continue on from undergrad into your graduate courses. And this is allowing students to apply any unused time that you have on your undergrad guaranteed plan towards the graduate plan that existed at that time when you became an undergrad. So you'd be able to take that time and apply it at a lower fixed rate on the graduate level as well. Kind of an example of how the guaranteed tuition plan would work. We have three groups, Group A, Group B, and Group C over here. You're coming in the fall of 15, entering with Group A, and you enter at a tuition rate, and you carry that same rate for that 4 years. So 2015, 16, 17, and 18, your rate would not change, with hopes that you would graduate in 2018. Should it reach the point that you had to have that 5th year to get by, then you would actually shift rate plans at that point, and you would enter the rate plan of the Group B, which is the group that started the year after you started. You started the fall of 15, this group started the fall of 15, and they also then had a new rate that is fixed for them for 4 years, and then you would fall into that rate plan in your 5th year. Should 6 years be required, something very similar would happen, where you would then shift into the third group, identified here, as 2 years after the initial start. So again, this person started in the fall of 2015. They'd shift over 2 years, and this would be a new fixed plan that they would be in for their 6th year. So now, I know it's what we're all been waiting for, and I actually gave you a slight preview here with the clip of my fingers, but it's time to actually review our recommended rates. So we are recommending transitional rates for students who were attending prior to the fall of 2014, prior to this past fall. And so remember, part of our recommendation is to guarantee rates for everyone. So the guarantee period is based on the years required to graduate, based on 30 semester credit hours per year. The guaranteeing less than 4 years would have reduced rates at that point. So how many in the audience would fall within the range of 60 to 89 hours at the end of the current academic year? Is there anyone that would fall into that classification? I see a few hands come up. So that group would actually have a rate in the fall of 2015 of $3,410, and that rate would be guaranteed for 2 years for them, allowing them enough time to have a guaranteed rate, a provisional, transitional guaranteed rate for 2 years to graduate. If you had 90 hours, you'd have a rate of $3,290, and that rate would be guaranteed for 1 year, allowing you enough time to get out of, to complete. We're still kind of toying with, down here at the bottom, we have the 0 to 29, and this AY 2014-2015 would be the students who actually started this past fall, who actually do need to have a guaranteed plan offered to them. It's just that Pan Am and Brownsville couldn't do that with the ending of the institutions. So we're still kind of discussing. They would definitely end up with a 4-year guarantee. We're still kind of toying with the amounts here, as you'll see on the next slide, this $3,650. But again, they would be guaranteed for 4 years, and this would be a group, on the bottom especially, the 2014 to 2015 group, would more than likely be able to have unused time within that guarantee period to actually apply towards their graduate degree. So if you were a fall 2015 entering freshman, your undergraduate rate at 15 hours would be $3,650, as it was for the 0 to 30 and the AY14, which is why we're kind of going back and still, we're not totally settled on really what we want that rate to be for the AY14-15 group. And then the graduate would actually come in with a cost of $3,250 for 9 hours, which is a full-time load for a graduate student. Now I want to go back to this chart that we looked at earlier that showed the 37 institutions across the state of Texas, which shows some highlights on this one at this point. So first we're going to start with the greenish looking highlights, number 4 and number 9, which is UT Austin and Texas A&M. And they are considered to be Tier 1 institutions. They are institutions that have at least $150 million worth of research expenditures and award 100 or more doctoral degrees annually. The institutions that are highlighted in the blue, light blue, are the 8 emerging research universities in Texas. To qualify as an emerging research institution, you have to have at least $14 million of research expenditures annually, award at least 20 doctoral degrees, offer at least 10 doctoral programs, and enroll at least 150 doctoral students. So the reason that this slide is important to us is this is the group of folks, the highlighted in blue, that UTRGV will be kind of in the state of Texas considering their peers at this point as we roll into that emerging research status. UTRGV will probably hit that status in the next couple of years, and so it kind of gives us an idea of the players that are going to be in our game with UTRGV and how their rates compare back to ours. Now we're going to touch briefly on financial aid and students qualifying for aid. Annual award offers shown here are for the AY, the academic year 2014-2015, to this point in time for the fall semester in November. It shows that 80% of our students are receiving just under $202 million, with an average annual aid per student receiving aid at $8,676. This data indicates that 80% of our students will experience limited impact from the recommended rates. Also, this data does not include the estimated designated tuition set-asides of an additional $5.5 million based off of the recommended rates. This additional funding would be used to limit the financial impact of a larger number of students. The next slide touches on what a sample financial aid package would look like. This is using a entering freshman at $3,650. When you just apply the Pell Grant and Texas Grant, it does show them with over $1,200 available for other educational needs. And I did say at the beginning we would touch on the survey results a little bit. At the end of today's presentations, we will post the full survey results on the UTRGV Tuition and Fees webpage. So you'll be able to see the entire responses to the entire survey at that point. I want to just touch on a couple here today, and we'll hit on the first one, which is, if the cost of 5 classes was the same as the cost of 4 classes, would I take 5 classes? And as you can see, between the agree and neutral, we have an overwhelming percentage of students who would actually take that 5th class, allowing them to graduate sooner and either move on into graduate school or into a position. And then we'll touch on this one. Am I willing to pay a higher tuition rate if the rate is guaranteed not to increase for 4 years? Not as substantial, but between the agree and the neutral, we're still sitting at over 50%, like the idea of having that fixed rate, that predictable cost going forward. The results did indicate that students are very sensitive to tuition increases, not a big surprise to anybody. But we are very aware of this, and we're very aware of that, and that it's a long-standing, low-cost strategy that the institutions have been working on for years, trying to keep that down and not moving tuition increases forward. But however, it's come to the point that the higher tuition rates are needed to sustain the operations while enabling us to attain the goals that have been established for UTRGV. Here are the email addresses for Alberto Adami, who is the SJ president here at UT Pan Am, and then Angelica Corona, who is the vice president of the SGA in Brownsville. And so certainly if we don't get to a comment or a question that you feel really needs to get addressed, we really do hope that you will email one of them, and we'll make sure that that gets presented to the task force at that point. So at this point, we will open up for any questions, comments that anyone has. Just anyone who has a question, please come down one of the aisles, and we'll have a mic at the end.
Awesome. So I'm a little bit sick, so I'm sorry if you guys can't hear me. So I actually went to that tuition meeting. I'm actually an SGA rep, and I really actually do like the 12-hour and the 4-year caps.
Okay.
But I'm actually a representative for UTSAC, the Student Advisory Council in Austin, and this last weekend we discussed online courses. And I know I asked at the tuition meeting, but I'd like to ask again.
Okay.
On slide 7, it said that there would be a same sticker price for all locations and modes of delivery. Does that include online courses as well? Because what we found in Austin this weekend is that it varies by UT system school right now, and we're actually recommending the entire UT system to reevaluate the online courses. And when we looked at that, most schools only charge $25, and UTPA costs $75 for online courses. Does that sticker price include online courses as well, since that is a mode of delivery?
It would, yes. We're looking at, we don't want you to worry about whether you're taking a class on the Brownsville campus, on the Edinburgh campus, and need to be on one of the other campuses. It would all be, if it were delivered online, it would be all a part of that package at that point, at that one price.
You said that the cap was only for resident students?
Yes.
So those that live on campus?
No, I mean actually residents, your ability to pay tuition as a resident or a non-resident rate.
Right.
And so those that are Texas residents would get the ability to have the 12-hour cap. A non-resident wouldn't, for the mere fact that they have a much higher and a rate that kind of changes year by year that is set by the state.
Okay, and so that was my little preliminary, but that was just a tidbit.
Okay.
The unemployment for college students is getting worse and worse because there's less available jobs because of the recession. It's getting better, but the thing about graduating in 4 years, you're turning out more and more graduates, but there's more and more competition for people that have undergraduate degrees.
All right.
Where is the emphasis on maybe going to grad school or furthering your education that way, rather than graduating earlier? Because in my experience, when you try to just turn out people, that doesn't necessarily give them the full enrichment of a great education, and it actually gives more of a tone of a business, money-making institution. And the Valley is very low income. It's one of the poorest regions in the United States. And so that's what I'm kind of worried about is, why are we turning this into more of a money-making institution rather than an enrichment education atmosphere where the online classes are great for not having costs, but where are you getting the education enrichment?
Right. And that's why we're looking at... We agree you should have educational enrichment, but that's why we're trying to focus on, with the guaranteed plan, allowing you to focus on getting out of school and moving into a graduate degree program. We really would like the idea of being able to offer, knowing that if you complete your degree, let's say a semester or even a year early, and you could transition into graduate school at that point, and you'd be transitioning at a comparable rate to your undergrad rate at that point. So we'd be pulling your... If you entered grad school next year, it would be one price, but when you were entering next year, but you tied back in with a program that started 3 years earlier, you'd be able to come in at a much lower cost and continue that education and come out with a graduate degree and possibly not much more time than what you would have had initially at a much lower cost. So we're really focusing it on that guaranteed plan.
Can I just make just a follow-up comment? I don't have a question, but
okay.
I just think it would be nice for there to be more consideration on the quality of education rather than the prices because there's a lot of students, I know especially in the political science department, that are very concerned about the quality of education, and rather than the turnout or in the online classes thing, that we're very concerned about that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Baylor. Okay, so basically, I kind of want to know, how was this tuition task force created? Who appointed you? Who else is in it? And why haven't the students really heard about it until now? Who is it that really makes the decisions about our tuition? And also, where is Dr. Guy Bailey?
Well, Dr. Bailey did appoint the task force that is here today. I'm the chairman of the task force. The folks that are sitting along in this first row over here are the members of the task force. We have it split between Brownsville and Pan American. We do have student reps. We pulled in the student government. He wanted to have the student government presidents. Unfortunately, the Brownsville one was just a little overwhelmed with her schedule, so we have the vice president on the task force, and they've been involved from the get-go at this point.
Who are they? Who are you?
Okay, sure, I can let you know. We have we have Arnold. Well, let me go back and make sure I get everybody's names correct. We have Alberto Adami, who is our SGA president here on campus. We have Angelica Corona, who is the SGA vice president. We have Marcy Deldon. She is the academic budget officer at Pan Am. We have Juan Gonzalez, who is the assistant VP and budget director here at Pan Am. We have Maggie Hinojosa, who is the associate executive VP for student affairs. And we have Nikki Hodgson, who is the executive director of student enrollment services. And Arnold Trejo is the financial aid director at Brownsville.
So, just real quick. So, Dr. Guy Bailey appointed all of you.
He did.
How long ago?
We kicked off the task force, I believe, the very end of August. And then we met with the SGA leadership teams in October. You're welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Alexandra, and first of all, I want to start off by saying I really like the 12-hour cap. It's a good incentive to take more hours, because for students like myself, it's necessary to take more than 12 hours every semester, and it's costly. But taking into consideration that life happens, you maybe get married, or you took courses you didn't need, or maybe your major changed, I was hoping that there was maybe talks or ideas floating around right now between y'all.
The task force?
That the task force, that maybe the fixed tuition rate for 4 fixed years could maybe be 4 years of fixed rate, but within a 5-year, what's it called, duration.
Okay.
So that maybe you figure out what you need to do, and you can take 4 years of a fixed rate.
Okay.
So just,
Okay. Well, something we'll take in and consider.
okay, that was all I had to say.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Hector. As some of my fellow UTPA Bronx have expressed, that the influence, like the effects of this on we live in the poorest region in America, and also we live in one of the most unhealthiest regions. Our region isn't very caught up with progressing forward. So one of my concerns is when you're ranking the universities from UT Austin all the way to 36 and 37.
Now, we're not ranking them. This
Although
is,
I know,
yeah,
okay.
right.
When you're providing that information of the rankings.
Right.
And you said it's like comparing apples to apples. These are the rates of all the institutions. The reason why the rates are so low here, though, is because families here earn significantly less than families in UTSA and UT Austin. Now, I personally, I know you said we want to make graduates graduate quicker within 4 years instead of graduating in 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. I'm personally going to be a 5-year graduate. Not one reason being that I don't have enough money to be, investing into 15 hours, 18 hours. And another reason why is that I invested in an extra major to make sure I'm well equipped for the workforce ahead of time as well. So I don't see why you'd want students to be graduating earlier instead of investing their time within the institution. That's one thing I think the more time we invest in the institution, the reason why poverty is so prominent here is because people are not skilled for the tasks for the economy that are coming forward. By making them graduate faster, You're not equipping your students. You're making them pick one thing and just go with it. And that's one concern I have. Instead of, raising rates for, going to 5, 6 years or making this sort of cap system, you should encourage students and incentivize students for investing more time in their skills for the workforce. And that's something that I personally work a lot in the community, and that's something I see every single day when working with parents in the community. Okay. And so comparing our community to UTSA, UT Austin, all these other communities isn't very adequate. And another thing that's very evident, look how many students we have in here. How many students can we raise our hands, students in here? It's probably 30, maybe 50 tops. The survey you posted on the presentation, how many students were surveyed?
Well, we sent it to all students.
Okay, but how many can conduct the survey?
Does anyone happen to know offhand the number of responses we received?
Undergraduate, 3,500.
Okay.
Pardon?
3,500 undergraduate for UCTA.
Okay.
So the survey is serving 3,000 students. We have 20-some thousand students on campus. And I think if we're going to consider increasing the tuition, I think we need to make sure we invest more time in considering all 20,000 students at UTPA, not just 3,000. And we see in this room, it's evident here. Mm-hmm. It's something we need to invest in actually getting the student voice into this, because I personally only get $2,800 in scholarship money. With the new system, I'd have to be paying $700 out of my pocket. And I already work 30 hours a week. I have a full course load, and I'm taking rigorous courses. I'm going to be stifled by this new plan. So I'm graduating in 5 years to invest for why am I being punished for preparing myself for the task force and have to dish out $700 that I don't have? Okay. So I think we really need to invest time into getting the entire student voice. And maybe we won't have a plan by next year, but the point is we need to make sure we take that time, because comparing ourselves to other communities that don't empathize at all with our community is not the way to go. Okay. And I really appreciate you holding this, and I really appreciate you trying to get the student voice, but I think we should invest more time to get in student voice, because I really don't think it's fair to only get 3,000 people on that survey when there's about 24,000 people on campus.
Okay, well, I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here, Marty. It's good to see you again. And I, too, was a part of that meeting that was held in Harlingen. And I guess just to answer a part of the question, just from the last speaker, in total, according to the survey results, there were 4,187 in total from both campuses, including undergraduate and graduate students. And I also appreciate the presentation because it reminded me of a question that I had during the meeting in Harlingen, and part of that had to do with really just first principles. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that there are a set of not just presumptions, but assumptions too, that are just being granted, and I'd like to question some of them, mainly why under the proposed group rates, tuition has to go up. I noticed that under Group A, Group B, and Group C, prices are incrementally going up. And I guess it's just a two-part question. So that's just the first one. And the second one is that it's sort of being just accepted that UTRGV will be an emerging research institution, and that was part of the founding principles of it. And I just want to know who exactly, as far as the student body and as far as the community goes, who really was asked if, the community wanted to be an emerging research university, and who established that, and why weren't the students, why wasn't the community consulted as to their opinions of whether, do you want to be an emerging research university or not? Okay.
Well, to answer your on the different cohorts A, B, and C, and it is strictly just being reset each year, because as first cohort, was 15, 16, 17, and 18. I'll go back to that slide if I can, just so we are clear here. So yes, this first group came in the fall of 2015 at a rate that lasted them for 4 years. So that rate was guaranteed coming in. So if this group comes in and they don't have we'll just say a higher rate, whatever that higher rate would be, if there's not an increased rate, then there's real no benefit here, because I mean, you can't, it gets harder to guarantee a rate as you move out into the future, because as we all know, there's cost of living increases every year. Every year we know we're going to experience increases in all sorts of things, and the university just can't continue to grow if we just say we're going to if we fix the tuition in 15 and we're just going to fix it permanently, it doesn't really solve anything for anyone going forward. So it's really just trying to reset that fixed amount based on what the costs look like for that group going forward, to answer your first question. And on the second question with the emerging research, I'm not familiar with who outside of the community with students and or external community who is involved in that emerging research classification. But I do believe the reason why that was chosen was just for the mere fact of the emerging research status turns you into pulling in more research into the institution, which then allows you to generate a larger economic boom from that impacts the entire community around the university. When you look back and that was one of the reasons why the state of Texas about, I want to say it's been 6 years, went out and decided to start moving forward with these emerging research institutions, because those other eight institutions that are highlighted in blue, they all are fairly new to the game as well, because the state found it very important that when you looked at the economies of Austin, around UT Austin, and around Bryan College Station with Texas A&M, and the benefits that the economy was experiencing from them being research institutions is what drove the state to want to try to incentivize other institutions to become research institutions, because there's such a positive impact, because you're generating, one of the earlier students mentioned the inability, jobs are becoming more difficult. Well, in those kind of environments, there's more opportunities for employment because of what's being generated from those research institutions. So I have to figure that's why this is important, because, again, another student mentioned the lower quality of, the lower standard of living associated with income levels in the valley, and we really do need to try to find infrastructure to help support the entire Rio Grande Valley through that, and that's one of the ways the institution can have a positive effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baylor, and thank you to the task force for holding this. I would just, for starters, clarify that it would be a good idea to have another one like this in due time. I know your deadline is in December,
right,
so we do have to keep that in mind. But
and I appreciate that comment, but we probably will not be having another one, though. Yeah.
Okay, just want to throw it out there. And I guess before I say my question, I do want to put just a little bit of things into context, okay, because I think it's important. And looking at the guiding principles for the new university, as I stated before, because I'm a member of student government and I was there at the discussion in Harlingen, and I brought it up there and I'll bring it up again. The first thing that it says is of the highest quality, that education has to be of the highest quality. But out of the three, the other one is affordable and accessible. And affordable really is open to interpretation, but it has to be kept in mind with the income of people here in the valley. And like I've stated before, and I've shared this with you personally, over a third of the households in this area are under the poverty line. And so by increasing the tuition rates, unfortunately, you're going to have to leave people out. I understand that tuition has to increase. However, the rate at which it increases needs to be the same at which the economic health of this area increases. So I'm worried that this might be faster than that, that this might be faster than the economic health of the area. And just to finish off, I will say that Chancellor Cigarroa himself, when he proposed this idea to the Board of Regents for the official vote in December of 2012, he himself alluded to the fact that because of the economic health of the country and the state, there are going to be limited resources available to us from the legislature and from the federal government. So that it's going to be a heavy task, and it's going to be very important to find other sources of funding without burdening the students' pockets. And so I think that's something that needs to be discussed and needs to be looked at further, and maybe the Texas legislature needs to have a bigger hand into implementing and finding ways to fund here without burdening the area of this country. So, like I said, it is a great idea to incentivize the economic health of the area, but that takes time. That's in a long-term strategy. What we have in front of us, is very short-term. And so it just needs to be evaluated at, And I do foresee that the economic impact will be great, but that's in the long term of maybe 10 to 20 years. We cannot really afford this in the short term.
Okay.
That's
Thanks for your
just my
comments.
comment. And the specific question, sorry,
Oh,
because
okay.
of that whole context, but my specific question regarding sources of funding is the permanent university funds.
Right.
What role are they going to play into this, as well as the STARS funding, which I've been made aware is for hiring faculty members.
Right.
So what, if you can answer those two
I'll be happy
questions.
to.
Permanent
On the permanent university fund side, it is not an operational resource for any of the institutions that are part of the permanent university fund. The PUF is a wonderful resource. It provides great things, but it provides buildings at that point, basically, which goes back to like our science edition. You know, we've got a $70 million science edition that is kicked off that is funded through the permanent university fund, which is something we wouldn't get without the PUF classification. But again, that PUF classification, that PUF resource does not flow into the institution and help us provide aid to students. It doesn't help us hire faculty. It does from the STARS perspective, which you also mentioned, which is another kind of subcategory of PUF, does allow institutions to seek higher end research faculty to pull those faculties into the universities, kind of like we did here recently with, for UTRGV with Dr. Williams Blangero, the diabetes specialist. You know, she's a STARS hire, and it allows us to attract faculty like that because they provide a couple years of salary support, to bring those folks on board. They'll provide you some resources to do some renovations, get them some high quality lab space. They'll allow them to buy equipment. But it's just kind of a transition package. It's not a long-term sustaining package. So you really have to bring those faculty on and within a couple of years be able to sustain their operation within the institutional resources that exist.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have just one big question. With
Okay.
the merger of the two universities,
Three.
we're looking at bringing more students in here, correct? From outside the valley.
I believe that would be the goal, yes.
Okay, where are we going to house them? Where are we going to park them? And what's the impact going to do to the employment, which is limited down here, to the students who depend on a part-time job to help them get through?
Yeah, well, we do have on-campus housing issues that need to be dealt with for the new university. Can't argue that. We have parking issues that need to be dealt with. I can't argue that point either. And so we've got a lot of challenges as we look to UTRGV to reach that potential student population that could be coming, yes.
But shouldn't we try to reach that before we start implementing other things? This stuff has been going on for years, 10 years here.
Right, and you're right. I don't know how long the issues have existed. I've been here 4 years, and we've certainly been trying to tackle space issues in that amount of time. We've been trying to tackle parking issues in that amount of time as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi there. My name is Albert Limon. I'm a part of the Student Government Association, so I'd like to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you that I think this is a really great idea. This is a good job that you guys have really done. You put in a lot of time and effort into this, and it really shows. I think that the 12-hour cap is a brilliant idea, and as an involved SGA member, we do see that students are upset at times that they don't have the necessary resources that they need, like around the colleges. So I guess you could say that you do have my support when it comes to the increased tuition rate because of the fact that we do see that we do need more resources, and that would really be the best way to do it.
Okay.
So I guess thank you for actually doing this, and I guess in the future you just might want to consider how much you increase the tuition by, because I feel like once students see that increasing it will actually benefit the university as a whole, that they would be more on board.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they're just really scared at this moment because we're giant shifting.
It's a nervous
So,
time. I appreciate
thank
your
you.
comments. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Dr. Baylor. My name is John Pena. I'm a native here from Edinburgh. Lived here my entire life. I'm deeply part of this community and part of this university as well. And I know you students have expressed from these questions, the unemployment, or not the unemployment, the poverty rates and such of our demographics. You note of the emerging research institution benefiting our community by, bringing in sources and new jobs and stuff. But my question is, just taking into the demographics of our community in particular, and it's important just to stress this out and to put it into context, is that UTPA is 90% Chicano, Latino, Hispanic population, and the great thing about UTPA and UTB is that these institutions were created originally to represent, to serve a population that has been traditionally underrepresented in higher education. So it seems to be an unjust part to have other UT schools, UT Austin and other demographics, who have a different demographic and population. So for who is this new research institution going to serve? The other state UT schools, they average about 30% average of demographic of this Latino, Chicano, and Hispanic population. So again, like the community is not going to be represented as well in this new UTRGV. So how do you justify that?
Well, but the whole basis behind creating UTRGV and the direction that's being taken and bringing in the medical school, the entire support system behind that is the idea of benefiting the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, it's through trying to provide additional physicians, which there's a physician shortage all over the valley. We need more physicians. We need better medical care. We need more jobs. So everything that the new university is about has all of that in mind, with trying to create more doctors, provide better health care, and actually increase the economic productivity of the entire valley, pump all of that back into the direct benefits which are in the valley. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's me again. I was told to
go to the back.
To just go back in line if I had a follow-up comment.
Well, we appreciate you cooperating.
But of course. So I just had a very quick follow-up question to, excuse me, a follow-up comment to the question that I previously asked, and it mainly just has to do with in hoping that a certain point of language is sort of just dispensed with, because one of the questions in the survey was pretty much asked students to agree or disagree with the following statement, which reads, "A university with a higher tuition rate will generally provide a higher quality education." Now, which, by the way, 70% did not agree with that. And that question is very important to me because I personally think that it is just a rephrasing of saying, or kind of dichotomizing expensive and cheap. Okay. I don't think that something that is inexpensive is cheap, per se. Okay. And I think that we have to do away with saying that if you pay more, you'll get a more quality education. I think that you can get definitely an exceptional, great quality education at a low price. You don't have to pay more to get a quality education. So I would just like to say that as we move forward, that this idea of expensive and cheap is completely done away with. You don't need to pay more to get a quality education. I've been at STC and I've come here and I've had great rates and I've had a great education. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Could you go into more detail about this new operational cost that's justifying our increased tuition rates, and does that have anything to do with the switch of fundings to the PUF funds?
Well, you mean on the earlier slide where we were talking about increased costs with buildings and things, or?
You're going to greatly increase in 1 year our tuition rate, and to justify that, you're saying it's because we're not meeting operational costs. If you can go into detail about that operational cost and why it's so great, and that from previous years, and like I said, does it have anything to do with this switching funding from our old fund to the PUF funds?
Exactly, and yes, there are going to be increased costs. Some of it was referenced on that slide with faculty, trying to create more faculty, more class availability. Some of the additional construction that's going and will be coming on campus will have additional costs. But you're right, part of it does go back to the funding versus HEAF. We have been on higher education assistance funds, which referred to as HEAF funding, both institutions forever, and we're switching to Puff. And there's been a lot of debate about that. The distinct difference between them is this. They basically are spent the same way. They can go towards the same kind of expenses. It's just that HEAF was a funding source that we received regularly in a given amount of funding from the state each year. Puff will come in various amounts because it will come in funding in the form of a science building at $70 million. It will come in the form of a general academic building in $54 million. So, and as it stands right now, we've received close to $200 million just in the last 6 to 8 months probably in Puff funding that we wouldn't have received as an institution. But we are offsetting that with the fact that we did used to have HEAF and kind of allocated that on a more regular, recurring basis on expenses across the university. So it's a little bit of everything at that point that you referenced. Thank you.
To clarify, you're saying we're getting more money from the state, but our students are going to have to pay more tuition to get that money?
Well, you're getting more money. You're getting additional chunks of money from Puff that will build a building. But that additional Puff dollars that are coming in won't fund a scholarship. It won't provide the resources for the operations of buildings. It won't provide faculty. It won't increase class availability. Thanks.
There are over 750 undocumented students at UTPA itself, and this is not counting the University of Texas at Brownsville students that are undocumented. With tuition on the rise and HB 209 that could possibly take away in-state tuition from all of these students, what is your plan to help these students continue their education, and what resources are you planning to provide with the new UTRGV institution?
Well, we would continue to try to provide the same resources that we are statutorily able to provide to those students going forward. So I don't see any changes unless statutes preclude us from doing something. That would be the thing that would keep us from changing how we are able to help those students. It would be really our guidance from the state as to what our legal authority would be.
So right now, if this bill, HB 209, is amended, all these students would not be able to receive in-state tuition. Correct. And they would have to pay international tuition, which is 3 times of the regular tuition. What is your plan to continue, to help them continue their education here? Would you create a program so that they could get, institutional funds, or would you just let them go and
that would have to be a decision that we sit down with the leadership team and Dr. Bailey to figure out how we would want to deal with that going forward for UTRGV, because yes, you're right, that creates a huge burden for those students, and yet it would be a matter of how the law is written that would kind of set what we could and couldn't do at that point. So it'd be it's hard to look forward and know what that legislation would look like, but I can't imagine that we wouldn't try to do something if it was within our abilities within the law.
So I'm actually on the UT System Student Advisory Council. As I said before, I serve on the Academic Affairs Committee, and we're actually addressing this as a UT system-wide thing. We're actually taking the stance against the proposed House Bill 209 because we're very much in favor of these undocumented students paying in-state tuition. So just know that the entire UT system is standing with you guys. We're standing with the proposed bill that happened many years ago this past. So it's actually the UT system-wide thing, and the students as UTPA, as the entire UT system, are standing with in-state tuition for undocumented students. So it won't be just UTRGV, it's going to be across the entire UT system. So don't worry about that.
All right. Since you guys built and are making the UTRGV for the medical school, what about, I've not heard anything about the engineering aspect from UTB and UTPA. What is your plan on bringing this Fortune 500 companies, Halliburton, Lockheed Martin, the list goes on and on, to bring, there's funding from these companies that could be inputted. We were talking about lack of resources in the engineering world. We feel this all the time in our labs, in a bunch of the facilities in the engineering, that the lack of resources. But what is your plan on bringing Fortune 500 companies to help this university, help UTRGV, and actually, help the engineering? Not only when it helps the engineering aspect, it helps the whole entire university. And for God's sakes, how possibly even bring back the tuition rates down. what is your plan on bringing Fortune 500 companies down into the valley for this whole entire UTRGV?
Right. Yeah, I think we need to. I don't necessarily think that I have a plan that I can deliver to you at this moment, but Dr. Bailey is all about trying to find additional resources, make connections for our students, create internships. So, and research just doesn't mean medical research. Research means, you know, all forms of research, and engineering is a big part of that STEM backbone for our current university as well as UTRGV. So I would think that as those programs get more light, our abilities to be able to attract those kind of folks in the valley is going to even get greater. I think as we begin to produce more research and get more attention and have that, it's a cycle we need to slide into. And I think once we start building that, all of those kind of things will flow from it.
Me again. I guess just to end it, thank you for saying that you were going to remain transparent, but maybe next time introduce the whole task force. My question is, will UTRGV leadership...
I did introduce the whole task force.
Yeah, I had to ask you though.
Oh, I apologize for that.
Okay. Will UTRGV leadership and UT system, that includes Dr. Guy Bailey, request funding from Texas legislator to fund UTRGV, a university that they mandated instead, or will you put costs on the back of students? So are they going to ask money from the legislator?
Well, there will be a legislative ask, but it's all built off of what they call a formula funding model. So we will pump all of the data for UTRGV will come from UT Pan American and UT Brownsville, and it will build what the state funds from that formula, and it's based off of the rankings of different majors, and there's cost matrices that fill in, but the state has a very detailed way of allocating state resources based off of semester credit hours. So yes, there will be an ask for the legislature, for sure. Well, cool. All right, well, I certainly appreciate everyone coming today. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to email one of our SGA representatives, and we really appreciate you coming in and taking time to listen to us today. Thank you.